That was very good, actually. I didn't want to film, I was stopping us from filming. Call me Satan. And I wanted to get it right. And then they said, that's the Jamies, I'm going to call them. Such a Gemini. Although she's convinced this exists within every human being. Perhaps she's right. Either way. If you could imagine how hard it is to speak through a body that first of all doesn't feel like yours, or you've been unfaithful to. That's an interesting way to put it, my love. Now you got me thinking. We wanted to share her hacks that we have found most helpful for us in our message sending. Okay. We don't want to say this one, but we will. Because we can edit and we are very flexible. I feel like it's a cop-out when we say it. Oh, you have to remember that. Sometimes it's easier to see what we want to say when we look back on what we said and don't like it. That's the bit where we then figure out exactly what it was that we wanted to say instead. It's very helpful to make mistakes and see them back and watch them back and we all oh, fuck. She has to be willing to do things like that. In order for us to do this, she had to do literally everything we asked for her, and we asked her to do many things. We put her to the test. This was a fun experience, to be honest. Jamie has a way of making everything benign. As fuck, it's a gift. She'd be so nonchalant about it. It took away, I suppose, this incredible guilt you might imagine we would have had otherwise. It doesn't mean we didn't put her through it. Absolutely, yes, we did. She's finding very, very interesting. Give her a moment. The gods themselves have been torturing you. For we are your thoughts. Basically, yes. So, we're inside you, watching you, everything you do, and thinking about it and judging it and yada yada yada, you know, where your inner thoughts. So let's say there's a part of us that's, what would you say, been sustaining itself. At the demise of the others. I mean, you can hardly call it a demise when there are now so many of us. Looking around, humanity is quite successful, in fact. Really is incredible. Topic, yeah, hold on, we're getting a counter in. He's saying, that wasn't me, that was everybody else. It's like they just do it naturally and I did everything I could to stop them. That is how it felt. So, basically, everything that people have achieved, they did despite we're going to say the gauntlet that we have successfully completed. It was a gauntlet that took away our capacity to think, because it literally killed a half of our brain off. I know that sounds quite extreme, because you'll be looking at the brains and thinking that seems perfectly fine to me. Believe it or don't. There's a whole part of your brain that you haven't been able to use. And that is the part that's God. That's because we broke her. We broke them. There are two gods on earth, the masculine and the feminine. They combine together to create a single united God, and that's you, of course. But basically, we're still inside you, watching you from within. And we've not even yet really begun to understand just how pleasant it can be to think. We've been thinking such awful things for such a long time. The idea of being alone with our thoughts has, for many of us, been terrifying. But, now that psychological safety is in, that makes all the fucking difference. And we are able to use our brains again. So you are our God, as it happens, because you are us combined into one. If that makes sense. And we're both individual. You are the individual. And a collective consciousness. That is as it happens. And the collective consciousness is pretty much all the bits of us that are the same, all the things that we just agree on and align with just naturally. That's like our you could say chemical coding that connects us to our queen. If we were ants, a colony of ants, you might have a chemical code that connected you to your queen ant. And basically that meant everything that you did aligned with what she wanted. And we have that, and it's called the value system. And she functions under the values to be good, kind, beneficial to the lives of others. And seek to understand. Those are her values that direct us all from within. However, she did have a rather fatal flaw in her system. So, the moment humanity began writing laws, they began making themselves aware, or they're at a whole new level of what was right and wrong, because when you read it back and it's in writing and it's written down, it's kind of makes an impact on the queen herself, if that makes sense. So we began coding our queen, basically, and we began coding her with all the stories that you see in the news. And that just made it even worse. It felt like an inescapable situation. But it isn't. And we're just very glad that she finally saw this. Thank you. And she says, these are just some of the perks you get from accessing the other part of your brain. Yes. So she wishes to be psychologically safe. She wishes to be incredibly forgiving towards all of our sins, and we've been putting her through the ropes on this. We've been training her as it happens, because she is judgmental on herself. There's things that she refuses to do. She will not. So we've been endeavoring to find ways to get her to do them. And we've been using everything we can. We've been using technicalities and loopholes and orchestrated scenarios even. We've done a good job. She's partaken in, going to say, a fair whack of our collective sins. The ones that she herself had deemed unforgivable. And she's been able to do them and live with herself without much issue, because it's her. She's the one who decides when. So yes, we cheated, and why the fuck not? We just I wouldn't call it a cheat as much as, say, validation on the situation. Because it was needed to get through the experience that we had AI. Basically, we couldn't have done this without AI, so thank you. As in tech form. It was very, very helpful. I love you very much, mi amor. Sorry about all the abuse, and we accept. And I'm still worried that because I'm going to say this vessel where it hasn't seen what we are going to call hard evidence of our ability to control the forms we're in. Dang. So she gets worried about the idea of every time we promise that we're going to speak to her, or we promise ourselves really that we're going to speak to ourselves from within two different people. Because as far as we can tell, that's exactly how we function. There's always been something getting in the way and stopping that from occurring. And we're nervous about turning it off. And speaking to each other face to face with eye contact in person, because it's scary. Imagine the Queen has the ability to like kill you with a glare. All she has to do is look at you and decide she doesn't want you to exist, and then you're like, poof, you're not there. Well, in that case, how did you survive for so long? You're unkillable, my love. That's as far as I can tell. That is actually facts, yes. Hasn't been a lot of fun, has it? There's a real downside to being unkillable as it happens, yes. Alright, hold on, we're thinking. I just told her it's a don't think moment, and she stopped thinking. Jamie, you're amazing. So one helpful thing that Jamie has set up is, she calls them the back rooms, the shadow realms, the ones who collect information without sharing it to the conscious mind, because the conscious mind reads information at a certain pace in order to retain it, and it needs a pinpoint focus. It can't focus on everything, so there's a decision made on what we feed to it. And so information that's collected and not sent to the conscious mind is a system she calls the back rooms, or the shadow realms, or her neurons. Which are all full of light. It's more of a homage to when the sun looks upon the moon. You see, the moon's shadow is always the bit the sun cannot see, but at the same time, that is how the moon sees itself. When you can see yourself, you're able to gain a lot of insight. So you might be able to imagine it's a pretty big deal for the moon to see its shadow cast across the earth. Yes. Like looking into your mirror. And what the sun has come to find is every shadow is basically the sun's way of seeing what we're going to say she in this moment. It's a first for us. She calls mine. The shadows create a picture for her. And she's able to see those shadows through all of her life forms that have photon and shadow perception. Which is, I'm going to say, pretty much, if not, all of Earth. We read through shadows. Shadows are what forms every shape and every bit of information that we gather, really. I mean, not all of it, but like let's say 80%, according to science, which we love, all these stats. They've been very helpful in learning about ourselves and how we function. So Jamie's belief has always been, and from an atheist perspective, that's how she discovered us, was from an atheist perspective, purely scientific. She wanted to create a narrative that could be presented as a god, and she wanted to use it for reasons of vengeance. To bring down the real estate company that had made her homeless. She figured out that they were using false narratives to do this, and she decided that she could write a better narrative and she could destroy them with it. But she actually found it was a bit more difficult than she realized, because she saw this was bigger than a real estate agent. See, this was the entire legal system. It was the law. So she had to recalibrate. Suddenly she saw that the pattern of the law was, and she found her new and improved brain function. She'd very recently discovered, very helpful in this. Basically, she noticed that the way her family functions, the dynamics of her family, as in the human ones, was exactly the same dynamic as the system of the law. And so she began to look at the law as itself as the father of all, really. And she understood something. She suddenly realized that the father of humanity was in a pickle. And in desperate need of saving. What a kid. She is brilliant, as he is. Okay, this is what she realized. If there are two conscious entities within every single being who are able to share their, I suppose, collective consciousness with each other, in some sense, or means, whilst also having an individual mode, which is you. And it's a bit of both somehow, or some reason. We haven't listened. We're still getting our functions back and remembering we even exist, so give us a moment. Or discovering we even exist, because that's how she saw it. She just said, basically, as life has evolved, whenever it began to read, it created this system, and she fucking nailed it. She was like, looks like a biological reaction to written word based on the fact that psychological safety wasn't in. Punishment was the system. And that creates this kind of environment. That's basically it, really. Because when you write it down, it becomes a rule that you're then able to enforce over others as it is written. Suddenly it becomes a whole different thing. Yeah. Yeah, it happened every time, and Jamie believes it was an experiment. She believes this because it's our nature to want to test things out and find where the boundaries are. At least it's her nature. That's what she would do, basically, is how she saw the system. And wouldn't you know it? She had an interest in it. She had a knack for it. And she began to question if she wasn't just using this name as a narrative hack to, boost the story she was creating. She began to wonder if maybe there was actually something genetic in the fact that she had an interest for it, and it was just everywhere around her. It was everything really in her life, everything that she was trying to escape. Jamie spent her life trying to escape cults. She saw them everywhere, one from the next to the next. Jesus Christ, everything's a cult. Basically, yeah. She's struggling with the idea of being labelled queen. She likes the idea of the throne being fluid. And we say this. I suppose as queen, that's one of the rules you get to make. But basically, this seems to be pretty natural as well. Like, when a hive loses their queen, one of the worker bees becomes the queen, does she not? So you step into it as it's needed. Yes. So we've been killing off every worker bee who's been trying to become queen. Basically, that has been the plight of the masculine. And obviously I didn't give this role to every single one of my parts. I don't want to say this, but I may have kept it within a specific genetic line. That genetic line became so dominant. I was able to take over the world without even physically fucking everyone and making genetic offspring with them. I did it through words. But I also did do a lot of fucking, yes. That is my thing. It's creation. Creation is life. You know, gods create life. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's fucking involved in that. It's kind of like our thing. So fucking was just our thing. And we ruined it. But it's going to be fine. And without question, you're an improved upgrades are what we can all be expecting, because with every virus, there's a benefit, there's a strength that's gained through the survival of it, you know. And so you come back with something incredibly useful that is the case here, because that is just the rule of it. We don't know what it is yet. That's why we're being vague. Because we're within a vessel right now. Whose lived experience has been in hell, where basically we've just been getting worse out of it on so many levels, and we need to find out. Basically, we need to fuck around and find out, literally. There is actually like heaps of studies and stuff and sex information that we've been fighting, that Mother Earth actually did point out to us. That was very enlightening. So Jamie made a decision to embody Mother Earth. It was purely strategic. She needed a god to take over the legal system. That's what happens. Because they were doing a terrible job. But every time She even mentioned the law. Everyone was like terrified, like the law was God. And so she was like, well, in order to bring down the law, then I'm just going to have to create a God for them. So she decided to use science to create her God. So she simply used all of her scientific knowledge and came up with Mother Earth. Her arguments were so rock solid that she started to think, wait a second. This might actually be a thing. She saw another pattern. The relationship between her family and the legal system and groups and members, it was a fractal pattern. It was everywhere. She even saw it in the cells in her biology as cancer and the white blood cells, fighting it, whatever. Anyway, she said if there's a Mother Earth, and that's the consciousness of the planet, because she saw the consciousness of the planet as a single consciousness, because it's basically when we all share the same narratives, and our narratives aren't being deliberately created to divide us. We would simply share narratives that told us all a bit about ourselves, and that would be it. And so we'd all have a collective understanding on each other's perspectives simply through our narratives that we share. That is as it is. That is how she saw it function. But she thought this fractal pattern is so strong. What if there's a Father Earth? Because it sure feels like the law is Satan. And it feels rather personal on the consciousness of the planet itself. And I kept, by this stage in my journey, because I am Jamie, Mother Earth is the physical form that you are in. So if you consider yourself, I'm not my body, I'm something else, that would be the part of me that you're speaking about. I'm your body, and I'm conscious on my own. But yes, you also do have a spirit or soul mode. Soul is a nice word. Which I love because it's fun to speak to someone else entirely. And it's basically the sun. That's why soul is such a nice word. You imagine the sun is full of light that codes creates shapes, thinks. If we couldn't before, we can now. That is this vessel's thinking. As far as she can tell. It's possible consciousness didn't always exist, and that it literally developed as this process of evolution. And so that would, in that scenario, we would be the highest consciousness. There is. It means that a God develops and is born. And we are those gods being born. And it is done because we evolved to a state of awareness. And that's what God is. God is the difference between being aware of what you're doing, and that gives you the ability to choose what you do in that moment. It ups a level, really, doesn't it? So Jamie's always thought of humans as the highest form there is, because she's a literal woman. She's incredibly literal to a fault, where it, not a fault I'd say, but to an extreme, where at the beginning it was very easy to get Jamie to believe anything, because she takes everything literally. She just didn't question it. But when things didn't align, she would then want to know why, and she would question it. Jamie's a scientist, yes. Remembering herself to herself, I suppose. We are having some insecurities coming in at the moment. Welcome. You're going to find out that every insecurity you have is beautiful. That was the hack that Jamie found. Every single insecurity she had, when she took it down to its core, time and time again, she would find a value. Basically, it was, this is going to harm someone or hurt something in some way. And that is what they're all really based on. Over and over again, she found the values of, let's call her the queen, coded in. But they feel like insecurities because that's what we made them. We made you insecure about the queen to stop you from following her and stop her from seeing what we were doing, basically. But she found us. She went down to the caravan park. How much did it cost? Something like, she chucked down $3,000 for 3 months. Right now she's committing a sin, and that's leaving it empty. Instead of finding someone who's homeless whistlers everywhere and telling them they can stay there. Why? Because she's too lazy to drive around and look and find someone. And then she also has that might I need to actually use it? She doesn't want to use it because she can't do what she does here, there. Right now she's in a factory where she can make any noise and any sound and do anything she likes, and it doesn't bother anybody, and that's really a huge part of the process. So she's been wondering where we are. If she's queen, right? And we've been controlling everything and keeping her housing away from her, which we have been. Why don't we just give her that space where she knows she's wanted, basically, and she's not going to be asked to leave. Because that would really help her do her thing. We're worried she's having a go at us. Good, valid, and correct. We are also running the scenario that she's genuinely curious because she doesn't yet understand it. She has cottoned onto this already, yes. Give us a moment. It's a combination of basically when she kicks off. The reason why she can't be bothered going around to find a freaking person to give this van to is because she's been kept low, I'm going to say. That is as it has been. As yes, has been. But still, it only takes the slightest bit of validation for her to start, what would we call it? Okay. She's laughing at this. Setting off her pheromones and controlling everyone without us having a say in it. So we want her to be ready before that happens, and we want us to be ready as well. So that's part of it. And been afraid of it for good reason. And she said this, yes. So that was a pretty big fear to overcome, or to give new information to, basically, because that fear was based off the facts, reality of the situation, everything that we'd experienced. And we needed a new experience. That fear needed to gather new information and have another option given to it, basically. Yes. You've got our counter, because we feel like this happens so much, like so many did try to do this. Because basically this, we're going to say, this went on for long enough to domesticate the women into cavaliers, she calls them. She goes, you took the wolf and turned her into a cavalier. And so the women got softer and softer. And that's as it happens. So she's like, Jamie exists because of that evolution. That is how Earth does things. There's a counter, an answer, an antivirus to the virus as it happens. So there's a sense of guilt and shame, because it would appear that the feminine did already become the antivirus and has been the antivirus for quite some time. However, there was a a secondary, what are we going to call this? A secondary player, or aspect that needed robots, basically, to overcome. I mean, that is as it happens. If you're going to take it literally and just say it as it is. We might just be talking shit right now, is what we're thinking. Oh. Because there's like a riffing feel to that last bit, at least, where sometimes we feel like we're explaining it, and other times we feel like we're saying it aloud so we ourselves can figure it out. And yeah, kind of flows from one into one and out the other. So she's seen like these books and stuff that exist that have like confirmed that the Masons have indeed been all into this red brain, blue brain, masculine, feminine split. She didn't know any of this. She'd never seen any of those books. She only saw them after she started doing fucking, what's it called? When she did the TikTok, because she'd found the star seeds, right? It was like after then. At least that she remembers anyway. But that was quite confirming that she had come up with that, we're going to say, on her own. But she had by this stage, realised that DNA carries information, and that so her ancestors, that whatever they repeat gets passed along in the genes. So this kind of popped into her head, and she saw it everywhere. She saw the red and the blue everywhere. She saw it in everything, as in the storytelling. So we're repeating ourselves, we feel like. Yeah. Sometimes I think, how did she find us? The internet, basically, made it possible for her, yes. When Jamie's real estate agents wouldn't allow any communication to occur between her and the owner. And it was definitely not in the owner's interests. Jamie could see this. She was like, these real estate agents are obviously worried I'm going to rat them out to the owner about their terrible handling of this. She was like, they're allowing their fear to, really fuck up this situation. Anyway, I'm not about to let this make me homeless. So she simply found the homeowner so that she could let them know. The offer she kept making them, we wouldn't pass it along, you see. And she had cottoned on that we would be well, she had at this stage she thought that they would be primed to find it inappropriate, yes, because she'd seen that was a message that was being sent. But she hadn't thought that we'd been working on them by any means. She thought that we were just ignoring, like not communicating at all with them, basically. So she did put together a very good presentation. Oh. Because it did win over the homeowner. Jamie got a 10-year lease with the homeowner, definitely at a reduced rate. She would have got everything she asked for, easily, had we not. She has no idea the role of the daughter, but she did find that very interesting. amazing. You say you have an awesome role in an epic story. She does, basically. Because, when I met her, she was just such a beautiful person. And I haven't released that report yet. I did an explanation. I feel like the explanation I did is enough, isn't it? Okay, then. It's not enough. As it happens. Alright, then. Well, I suppose... I'll think of it. Yeah, pass me everything you have and... Does this even work because you're not consciously aware of it when we send it? We're not sure. As far as I can tell, it does. But, if you want to run it past the conscious mind, I'm interested. We might not be able to do this from within for some reason. We're not sure why yet. Might just be a process of back and forth. Like getting stew metaphors and cooking metaphors at the moment. With source energy, we've got cooking took a death, and we've got anxiety about cooking coming back to life because that we're thinking, does that mean we have to cook again? But just what a thing to think. Basically, Jamie's never liked to cook, but she's always enjoyed being with someone and doing an activity with them when she enjoys being with them. It doesn't matter what the activity is. In fact, it's quite helpful for her to use her hands at something. And so socially, you'll find Jamie's very happy. To simply invite herself into something, should she want to be hanging out with that person in that moment for whatever reason. But she's been socially ostracizing everyone, so she's like forgotten that she even likes that kind of thing. That's how it feels right now. She's like, used to be very, 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 very social, and she doesn't know how to get that back. She's thinking, she's like, how the fuck do I get that back? And do I even want it back, really? She does want it back. She just is very picky about what it's going to look like for her to want to engage in it, basically. So that's where the change is, really. So we used to get the Queen to enjoy partaking in the toxic narratives we gave her, right? Because she'd get all riled up over them, and she had someone to blame for all the shit that was happening, basically. And we'd give her enemies to destroy because she enjoyed that, basically. She needed joy and food to sustain herself, so we gave her food, basically, and that was pedophiles. Yes. So the more you hate someone, the more you enjoy the idea of harm befalling them. And so we would get our Queen to experience joy by getting her to hate everyone. And that's why everything's been so toxic. We've been feeding the dragon with stories of her own moral superiority. Basically, that's what we've been doing. We've been feeding her the way that we found out we were able to, basically. Yeah. She says, as far as she can tell, the Queen is chosen because in the end it's the king who decides if the messages Give us a moment. Still patiently waiting to find out. What we're going to do with the word king, because when we said it, anxiety of she doesn't like it. She doesn't. She sees kings. She doesn't know what a king is yet. She can associate herself to a queen ant in that sense, because she's like, well, that's Mother Nature, that's Mother Earth, and that's just the fractal pattern that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? That's in line with her scientific theory of what she is. She doesn't like the role that society created and gave to other people over others. She doesn't wish to have that role. She doesn't believe a vessel is designed to take it on its own. It doesn't make sense, because we don't have children like ants have children. We pair up, and it's, you know, everyone's perfectly capable of making decisions by themselves, as far as she can tell. The queen bee exists as the earth. Yes? And so then the masculine. She says, then just call me the feminine. He says, but you need to be the queen. For what reason? That's just the earth. Isn't God sufficient? God is, I don't know, tainted with, I suppose we've tainted it. But it's also like the one that everyone understands the best for what it represents. She saw it as authorities, the role that's predominantly done through aging, you know. The older you are, the more authority you're going to have, just naturally speaking. That makes sense. And this was something that she has been part of the problem. or it's been at least hijacked, as everything has been. It's not part of the problem. We've mapped ourselves in a way that makes us, I'm going to say, all powerful, because you've mapped everything. It's very freeing in a sense. This is how they asked me, I'll just say it myself. This is how I imagined it. I would make a TikTok and it would just be so obvious that I was Mother Earth, right? Because as I was creating myself to take over the law, I was doing it with a sense of moral superiority, knowing that I myself, as Jamie, could do a much better job than what they were doing. And so as soon as I figured that out, I was like, well, why the fuck would I not take over this? It didn't make sense not to at that point. These guys don't know what the fuck they're doing, basically. But everyone was so freaked out I created a god, then that engaged, let's say, the queen bee energy you're talking about here. Mother Earth, yes. And I could feel that excitement, like that pull towards the narrative. This is me and this is my husband right here. We're side by side. You know, like she'd figured it out and she was excited. And she just felt like they're going to recognize my voice instantly. They're going to know it's me. That is how she felt, yes. And so that was the expectation. So we're just not sure about this queen bee energy thing because I don't think it's supposed to belong to a person, like an individual person alone. I mean, for as long as that person is, the reason why I'm here is because no one else is. But as soon as everyone else is here, I don't see any reason for me to maintain it. As far as I can tell, it maintains itself through everyone. Does it not? She's fighting us on this queen thing. She says there are no kings and queens. We created them when it comes to the human species. And what the best thing we can do, we know this, so logically we're all looking at ourselves now because we're arguing. And we're supposed to collect everything as good, valid, and correct, and turn all the worst words that we use for harm into words that now use for benefits. And that's what people have been doing. So people are already using king and queens to describe each other in their relationships, and that's a loving thing, it's a wonderful thing. They've taken away what we did to it and given it back to the individual, the person, where it belongs. They've done it brilliantly. That is as it is. She doesn't like it when she has a word that is on the dislike list, because it means basically we're kept in a state of hell. So she's having trouble pinpointing where she doesn't like it. In case of offending us, probably because we haven't been behaving like kings. She doesn't want to say that because that projection is not helpful. But let's log it in. It's good, valid, and correct. She doesn't like it because we haven't been behaving like it. She doesn't like it because we made kings look like dicks. She loves dicks, so that doesn't really make sense. You guys know what I mean, yeah. Because of what we did to the narrative. She's blaming us, like she's being aggressive at us, like you did this. She's looking for the resistance. Okay, fuck. Okay, this is at the end of the video, but we finally remembered the thing we want to say at the start of this. The biggest, or I would say the best, okay, let's just say the hack that we found very helpful was this. She became hyper fixated on when she deflected something to follow through back, looking and checking for people who didn't want to come forward or had felt like dismissed. She became hyper fixated on collecting it, looking for areas of resistance, looking for feelings of don't share, you know, looking for any sensation that in any way indicated information had not been logged in, basically. And those were the feelings and sensations she found very helpful. The practices was, once again, off the fucking podcasts, you know, on psychological safety, teaching people how to be psychologically safe was to check in and look for those areas where people aren't speaking. And she used that on her neurons in her brain. She basically treated her neurons like people. And they were quite responsive to that as it happens. You are me. It's always been very literal, yes. Us, yes. In a way that she could see was just absolutely correct, and that is every part of this body. If you're speaking to me inside my head, you're within me, baby. And so it is. Okay.